And the first story is called Whispers in the Woods. In the small town of Eldridge Hollow, surrounded by tall mountains and thick forests, there was an old forest that everyone calls the Whispering Pines. Many stories about the woods had been told over the years. Tales of people getting lost, strange sound echoing through the trees at night, and shadows watching from the darkness. Most people in town stayed away from the woods, especially when the sun went down. But me and my friends were curious about this forest. Was it true that it trapped people's souls? We didn't believe it. We thought that those were just some silly stories. So one chilly autumn evening, all 6 of us decided to explore this place. Before that, we decided to learn some spooky stories to tell everyone on the way. So we were ready. With flashlights in our hands, we went when everyone was asleep, so no one could stop us. But if we knew what will happen next, we would stay at home and never go. But what can I do now? ... The deeper we went, the stranger the wood felt. We were wandering for about an hour, and suddenly Belle asked, "Wait, where is Cassie?" We all turned around, and Cassie was gone. We didn't understand how that could happen. We could never lose Cassie because she's part of our friend group, and she for sure was with us. Or ... was she? Let's look for her, I said. And we started going around the forest, screaming, "Cassie, where are you?" Suddenly, Belle screamed, "Oh my God, Cassie, we were so worried about you." And then she screamed when she saw her. I moved closer and screamed too. That was Cassie, but she had white eyes and very pale skin. Also, her hair turned white. She looked like she fell in the white paint. But that was not all. She was sitting and wasn't even blinking, like she was a statue. "Belle, are you sure that's Cassie?" Luke asked. "Wait, ... who is Cassie?" Belle asked. "Belle, you don't remember. She is our friend." Lucas said, "What do you guys mean?" There were always 5 of us. "Guys, I'm scared. Let's get out of this place," I said, because I was very scared of Cassie. And even Belle, her best friend, didn't remember her. "Yunji, are you serious? We just started exploring. I had so much fun. And oh, see that old house? Let's go there." Belle said. "Belle, no, we are going." Lucas said, "You guys are so boring. I'll go there with Luke. Elise, will you go?" "Sure, Belle. We don't know what Yunji and Lucas are talking about. There was no Cassie, and this is an ordinary forest." These tales were faked, and they went, "Okay, Lucas, let's go." "I'm definitely not going with them. Are you?" "I'm not going to." "Let's go." And we went back talking. Suddenly I heard that Lucas stopped. "Lucas, let's go." "Why did you stop?" I turned around and there was no Lucas. That was it. I started running, and in 5 minutes I was already back in my village. I ran in my house. "Mom, I'm so scared." "Wake up, I'm scared." I started telling her everything that happened. "Who are those guys you're talking about?"
The Old Oak Tree. There was once a small village surrounded by thick, dark woods. At the edge of the village stood an old oak tree. It was massive, its branches twisted and gnarled, reaching out like long, bony fingers. The villagers had always been afraid of it, and they warned their children to never go near it, especially after sunset. One evening, a boy named Tom, who had recently moved to the village, was playing near the woods, and his friends had always told him about the oak tree and how strange things happened around it. But Tom wasn't afraid. He didn't believe in the old stories. That evening, as the sun began to set, Tom wandered towards the tree, ignoring the warning in his mind. He thought it was just a silly superstition, As he approached the oak tree, the wind began to pick up, howling through the branches. He heard a creaking sound like the tree was alive, but Tom brushed it off as the wind. When he reached the tree, he noticed something strange, dash a small door in the trunk, almost hidden by the thick bark. Tom's heart raced with curiosity. He had never seen a door in a tree before. Without thinking, he knelt down and gently pushed it open. Inside was pitch black. He couldn't see anything, but he felt a cold air rush out of the tree, sending a chill down his spine. But his curiosity got the best of him, and he stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind him, and he found himself in a narrow, winding tunnel. The walls of the tunnel were damp, and the smell of rot filled the air. Tom hesitated for a moment, but then he heard a voice, a soft, whispering voice, coming from the darkness ahead. It sounded like it was calling his name. Tom, he couldn't tell if it was real or just his imagination, but something deep inside him told him to turn back. But Tom was too brave to admit fear. He pressed on, following the whisper. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, the air growing colder with each step. Finally, the tunnel opened up into a large underground room. In the center of the room was an old stone altar covered in dust and cobwebs. On the altar was something strange, a small wooden box glowing faintly in the dim light. Tom reached out and opened the box. Inside was a black, smooth stone that seemed to pulse. Energy. As soon as his fingers touched the stone, he heard the whispers again, louder this time. Now you belong to us. The room suddenly grew colder, and the whispers turned into shrill, screeching voices. The walls of the room began to shift, closing in around him. Panicked, Tom tried to run, but the tunnel was gone. The walls of the underground chamber were closing in, and the ground beneath his feet began to crack. He dropped the stone, and as it hit the ground, the whispers stopped. The stone rolled away, and the room grew silent. Tom turned to find the door, but it had disappeared. All that was left was the endless darkness. Suddenly, the air grew thick, and Tom felt a cold hand on his shoulder. He froze in terror and slowly turned around to face the figure behind him. It was a pale, twisted version of himself, its eyes black and empty, its mouth stretched into a cruel smile. The figure opened its mouth and whispered one last thing, the voice chilling him to his core. You should have never come here. The next morning, the villagers searched the woods for Tom, but he was never found. They say that on windy nights, you can still hear his voice calling from the old oak tree, lost forever in the darkness.
Forgotten cabin. In a dense, mist-covered forest stood an old, forgotten cabin. Its roof was sagging, and the walls were covered in layers of moss and ivy. It looked as if it had been abandoned for years, maybe even decades. No one in the nearby town dared go near it. The elders would tell their children frightening stories about the cabin, warning them to never wander into the woods, especially after dark. They spoke of strange happenings, of things that shouldn't be in this world, things that lived in the shadows. One rainy afternoon, a group of friends, Ethan, Sarah, Lucas, and Emma, decided to go on a hike through the woods. They had heard the stories about the cabin, but they didn't believe in old superstitions. They were young, full of excitement, and curious. The weather was perfect for an adventure, with the clouds heavy and the air cool. The forest was dense and quiet, the trees towering over them like ancient sentinels. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the path grew narrower, and the trees began to close in around them. The sun barely broke through the thick canopy of leaves above. Strange sounds echoed from the distance, twigs snapping, wind howling through the branches, the rustling of unseen creatures. But none of them seemed to notice. They were too busy joking, laughing, and taking photos. It wasn't until they stumbled upon the cabin that the mood changed. "Is this the old cabin?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Yeah, I think so," Ethan replied, squinting at the overgrown structure in front of them. "But it's not supposed to be this close to the path." The cabin seemed to loom in front of them, its windows dark and empty like hollow eyes. The door was slightly ajar, swinging back and forth with the breeze, making an eerie creaking sound that echoed through the trees. "Should we go inside?" Lucas asked, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and fear. "Why not?" Emma said, grinning. "Let's check it out. It'll be fun." They approached the cabin, each step making the wooden floorboards groan under their weight. The air inside was damp and heavy, and the smell of rot filled their noses. The room was dark, save for a few thin streams of light coming through the broken windows. The cabin looked ancient. Dust and cobwebs covered every surface, and the furniture, though old, seemed strangely intact. A rocking chair in the corner swayed back and forth slowly, though there was no breeze to move it. The walls were covered with faded photographs and strange symbols, some painted in what looked like blood. "I don't like this," Sarah said, her voice shaky. "This place gives me the creeps." "Let's just take a look around," Ethan said, trying to be brave. "We'll be out in 5 minutes. Promise." The group wandered further into the cabin. The floor creaked with every step they took, and every room seemed colder than the last. As they explored, they came across an old wooden staircase leading down into a basement. It was dark below, the air thick with a sense of foreboding. "Should we go down there?" Lucas asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. "Maybe we'll find something interesting," Emma said, clearly intrigued. They made their way down the stairs, each of them feeling more uneasy as the darkness swallowed them up. The smell of decay grew stronger the further they descended. When they reached the bottom, they found themselves in a small, damp room. The walls were covered with strange markings, symbols that seemed to move when they weren't looking directly at them. In the center of the room was a wooden table, old and warped, with a blood-stained cloth draped over it. On the table were more photographs, but these were different. They weren't just pictures of people, they were pictures of the 4 friends, their faces twisted and distorted, like they were being pulled apart by some unseen force. "These weren't here before," Ethan said, his voice trembling as he picked one up. Suddenly, they heard a noise from behind them. A low, guttural growl that sent chills down their spines.
They spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the shadows, dark and still. "I think we should leave," Sarah said, her voice nearly a whisper. Before they could turn to go, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The room went completely dark, and the air became suffocatingly cold. Then, from the shadows, something moved. A figure, tall and thin, with pale skin and eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. It was a woman, or something that looked like one. Her hair was long and matted, her clothes tattered and torn. But it was her eyes that made them freeze in terror. They were hollow, empty, and seemed to pierce right through them. "Who are you?" Ethan whispered, his voice shaking with fear. The woman smiled, her lips stretching unnaturally wide, revealing rows of sharp, yellow teeth. "You shouldn't have come here," she hissed, her voice low and raspy. "Leave us alone," Lucas shouted, backing away. But the woman didn't move. Instead, she began to speak in a language none of them understood. Her words were like a chill, and with each word, the air grew colder, and the shadows around them seemed to grow darker and deeper. The but all